Dr. Eliza Chen's eyes burned from staring at her monitor for 18 straight hours. The massive array of quantum computers at the United Nations Space Command Linguistics Division hummed around her, processing the first confirmed extraterrestrial transmission in human history. "Final decryption sequence complete," announced the AI assistant. Translation accuracy estimated at 97%. The message materialized on her holographic display, and Eliza felt her breath catch. After decades of searching the stars, humanity had finally heard from someone else, and they were desperate. "To the civilization of Earth, we send urgent greetings from the Altarian Alliance. Our worlds face imminent destruction from the Viridian Horde, a merciless collective that has already consumed 17 star systems. Our deep space monitoring has observed your technological development for generations, and we believe your military capabilities and strategic thinking may save us where others have failed. We humbly request immediate assistance. Time is critical. Our outer colonies have already fallen." Eliza's hands trembled as she forwarded the message to Admiral Jackson Way, Supreme Commander of Earth's Unified Defense Forces. Within 30 minutes, the Admiral had convened an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. "This is what we've prepared for," Admiral Way told the assembled world leaders, his weathered face solemn on the massive display screens. "First contact, not with conquerors or colonizers, but with potential allies who need our help." The Security Council vote was unanimous. Earth would send its newly completed interstellar fleet to aid the Altarians. As celebration erupted across the planet, Eliza returned to her lab, something nagging at the edges of her consciousness. She had dedicated her life to understanding how language and communication might function across species boundaries. The Altarian message was perfect, almost too perfect. "Run a neurological response analysis on the translation patterns," she instructed her eye. The results appeared 3 hours later, long after the rest of her team had left to join the global parties. Embedded within the seemingly straightforward message were subtle linguistic structures that triggered specific neurological responses in the human brain. Heightened empathy, reduced skepticism, increased willingness to act quickly without complete information. Cross-reference with known psychological manipulation techniques, Eliza whispered. 93% correlation with targeted emotional priming. The AI responded dispassionately. Eliza ran her fingers through her short black hair, mind racing. The message had been crafted by beings who understood human psychology at a fundamental level, understood it well enough to exploit it. She developed a modified translation algorithm, one that stripped away the emotional triggers and focused purely on information content. When she ran the Altarian message through this filter, a shadow conversation emerged beneath the plea for help. Target species responding as predicted to simulated distress. Behavioral analysis indicates high probability of military intervention. Prepare containment protocols. Remember, their technology is valuable, but their emotional responses make them vulnerable. They will come to save us, and we will take everything. Eliza's hands flew across her interface, pulling up Admiral Way's direct communication channel. The first ships of Earth's humanitarian expedition were already preparing for departure. "Admiral, we need to talk," she said when his face appeared on her screen. "The Altarian distress call. It's not what it seems. We're being played." Way's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain." "They've studied us, sir. Studied us closely enough to know exactly how to manipulate our responses. This isn't a cry for help. It's bait in a trap." Instead of the dismissal she half expected, Wei nodded slowly. "Can you prove it?" "I already have." She transmitted her findings. After reviewing her data, the Admiral was silent for a long moment. "The fleet launches in 12 hours. Be on it, Dr. Chen. We're still going, but not as saviors." "Sir." A cold smile touched Wei's lips. If the Altarians want to play games, they'll discover something their observations missed. When it comes to deception, humanity wrote the book. Lieutenant Commander Sophia Okonkwo's stealth scout ship Whisper slipped through the darkness of the Altarian system, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to conventional sensors. After 3 weeks of travel alongside Earth's primary fleet, Admiral Wei had ordered her to break formation and proceed ahead for reconnaissance. Approaching outer planet now, Sophia murmured to her eye co-pilot, "Sensors at maximum sensitivity." What she saw through her viewports contradicted everything in the Altarian distress call. The supposedly devastated outer colony showed no signs of battle damage. Instead, massive holographic projectors orbited several moons, casting illusory scenes of destruction visible only from the direction Earth's fleet would approach. "Well, that's unexpected," she whispered, directing her sensors to record everything. "Let's see what else our new friends are hiding." She guided the whisper toward the system's gas giant, following unusual energy signatures that shouldn't exist in a civilization allegedly fighting for survival. Hidden in the planet's shadow waited the truth, a massive armada of warships in pristine condition, positioned perfectly for an ambush. "Tactical analysis," she commanded. "Estimated 300 capital ships," the AI responded. "Weapons systems powered down but on standby. Formation consistent with standard encirclement tactics." Sophia's dark eyes narrowed as she documented the fleet's position. "They're not running from anything. They're hunting. And we're the prey." Back on the Earth flagship, Determination, Dr. Chen and her team worked around the clock decoding intercepted Altarian communications. The breakthrough came when they identified 7 distinct linguistic patterns within what they'd originally thought was a single alien language. "They're not one species," Chen explained to Admiral Wei in his secure briefing room. "The Altarian Alliance comprises 7 different species, each with distinct communication patterns and psychology." She displayed holographic representations of communication networks flowing between different ship classes in the Altarian fleet. "And that's their weakness," she continued. "Their coalition requires constant translation and interpretation between member species. When they communicate about us, patterns emerge that reveal their true understanding of humanity." She played a translated conversation between Altarian commanders. The humans respond predictably to emotional stimuli. Their entertainment transmissions indicate a species driven by heroic impulses and savior complexes. They will rush to rescue the vulnerable without question. A psychological flaw we will exploit fully. Admiral Wei's expression remained impassive as Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo's reconnaissance data arrived, confirming Chen's analysis. "They've studied our broadcasts, our films, our news, our stories," Wei said, "but they've mistaken our fiction for documentation. They think they understand our psychology." "A critical error," Chen agreed. "They've constructed an elaborate trap based on a fundamental misinterpretation of human nature." Wei summoned his senior commanders to his quarters that evening. The room fell silent as he outlined the situation. "The Altarians believe they know us," he said, his voice steady. "They expect emotional, impulsive heroes eager to save the day. They anticipate we'll be devastated by their betrayal, disorganized in our response, and ultimately defeated by their superior numbers." Captain Hiroshi Tanaka frowned. "Should we turn back, Admiral? Warn Earth?" "No." Wei's gaze swept across his officers. "We will give them exactly what they expect, on the surface. Meanwhile, we'll gather intelligence on a species arrogant enough to think they can outmaneuver humanity." He activated a holographic tactical display showing the approaching Altarian system. "I'm initiating Operation Mirror Maze. We will reflect back exactly what they expect to see, knave heroes walking willingly into a trap." His eyes hardened. "But underneath, we'll be preparing a response that will redefine first contact scenarios for generations to come." Commander Okonkwo, newly returned to the fleet, allowed herself a small smile. "They want a show, Admiral. Then let's give them one they'll never forget." Wei finished. "But remember, not a single crew member outside this room can know the truth. We must all become perfect actors on this cosmic stage." Earth's fleet arrived at the edge of the Altarian system with appropriate fanfare. Admiral Wei had choreographed every aspect of their entrance to project exactly what the Altarians expected: earnest heroism with a touch of technological arrogance. "Open a broadcast channel," Wei commanded from the bridge of the Determination. "Let's introduce ourselves properly." The view screen flickered to life, showing Wei standing tall in his dress uniform, his expression carefully constructed to convey concerned determination. "This is Admiral Jackson Wei of the United Earth Space Command. We received your distress call and have come to render assistance against the Viridian threat. Our ships stand ready to defend your worlds." The response came quickly, displaying an alien with iridescent scales and elongated features. "Admiral Wei, I am Supreme Coordinator Thalen of the Altarian Alliance. Your swift response honors your species. We feared all was lost." Behind the scenes, Dr. Chen analyzed every microsecond of the transmission, her specialized equipment detecting minute fluctuations in Thelan's speech patterns. "Stress indicators in the vocal harmonics," she murmured to her team. "Micro-expressions consistent with deception." And noticed the background, supposedly a damaged command center, but the technology is pristine. She transmitted these observations to the Admiral's neural implant, allowing him to receive her analysis while maintaining his performance of sincere concern. "The Viridian forces have withdrawn temporarily," Thelen continued, giving us a brief respite. "Please, bring your fleet to our central world for strategic coordination." "Of course," Wei replied, the perfect image of a commander eager to help. "We'll follow your guidance." As Earth's ships changed course toward the heart of the Altarian system, directly into the waiting trap, Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo's special operations teams deployed from the fleet's underbellies in vessels smaller than most sensor arrays could detect. "Shadow teams away," Okonkwo reported from her stealth command module. "Deploying surveillance network now." Her operatives released thousands of microscopic drones that dispersed throughout the system, attaching to Altarian ships, scanning their technology, and mapping their command centers. Each drone transmitted data back through quantum-entangled particles that couldn't be intercepted or detected. Meanwhile, the Altarians welcomed the human fleet with elaborate ceremonies showcasing their supposedly battle-damaged worlds. They presented heart-wrenching testimonials from survivors of Viridian attacks and detailed fictional accounts of the enemy's tactics. Earth's officers responded with appropriate sympathy and offers of technological assistance. Engineer Corps representatives shared technical specifications for defensive systems, all carefully modified with subtle but critical flaws that would render them useless in actual combat. Each night, the senior human officers gathered in a secure chamber on the Determination, its walls lined with quantum-dampening fields that prevented any possible surveillance. "They're buying it completely," Commander Janessa Rodriguez reported, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from her voice. "Their internal communications show they believe we're completely taken in." Dr. Chen displayed a holographic map showing the 7 distinct Altarian species and their relationships within the Alliance. "We've identified each species' psychological profile, communication patterns, and hierarchy. The aquatic Morillians value ceremonial recognition above all. The crystalline Shardai prioritize technological acquisition. The gaseous Ventari fear territorial encroachment." Admiral Wei nodded, studying the display. "And their weaknesses? Interspecies distrust runs deep," Chen replied. "Their alliance appears stable on the surface, but historical grievances remain. We've identified at least 12 potential fracture points we can exploit when the time comes." Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo gestured to a separate display showing detailed scans of Altarian weapon systems. "Their technology is advanced but predictable. They rely heavily on quantum-locked targeting arrays that have never encountered Earth's adaptive electromagnetic countermeasures." "Excellent," Wei said, allowing himself a small smile. "Continue gathering intelligence. In 3 days, they'll spring their trap, expecting to catch heroes and finding only actors. The real performance begins when we drop our masks." Outside their secure chamber, the Altarians continued their elaborate charade, never suspecting that their intended prey was methodically cataloging every aspect of their civilization, psychology, and technology, preparing for the moment when the hunters would discover what it meant to challenge humanity. Supreme Commander Zil Vorax studied the holographic display of the human fleet positioned above Alteria Prime. 3 days had passed since their arrival, and the preparations were complete. Now was the time to spring the trap that would deliver humanity's advanced technology into Alterian hands. "Are all battle groups in position?" he asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of anticipation in his species. "Yes, Commander," his executive officer confirmed. "The humans suspect nothing. Their ships remain in standard defensive formation around our civilian centers." Zilvorax's mouthparts clicked in what passed for a smile among the Drenthai, the dominant species of the Alterian Alliance. "Begin the operation." Throughout the Alterian system, holographic projectors deactivated, cloaking fields dissolved, and 300 warships emerged from hiding. They formed a perfect sphere around Earth's fleet, weapons charging to full capacity. On the command deck of the Determination, Admiral Y watched the encirclement unfold with an expression of carefully crafted shock. "Alterian vessels decloaking on all sides," his tactical officer announced, playing her part perfectly. "We're surrounded, Admiral." Wei allowed himself to appear momentarily stunned before recovering with forced composure. "Open a channel to Coordinator Thalen. Demand an explanation." Instead of Thalen, Supreme Commander Zilvorax appeared on the view screen, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the command center lights. "Admiral Wei," he said, mandibles flexing with apparent amusement. "I trust this development comes as a surprise." Wei stood rigid, his face a mask of betrayed nobility. "What is the meaning of this? We came to offer aid. And we appreciate your eagerness." Zilvorax gestured casually. "The Viridian Horde is a fiction, Admiral. A necessary deception to bring your ships, and your technology, to us without resistance." Behind Wei, his bridge crew reacted with convincing displays of outrage and dismay. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen's younger sister and communications officer, even managed to produce tears of righteous anger. "For decades, we have studied your broadcasts," Zilvorax continued, clearly enjoying his moment of triumph. "Your entertainment transmissions revealed a species technologically advanced, but psychologically simple, creatures driven by emotion rather than strategy, eager to play the hero, quick to trust. Today proves our analysis correct." Wei allowed his expression to shift from shock to grim determination. "You've made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. Zilvorax dismissed this with a wave. "Surrender your vessels and transfer your technical databases to our control. Do this, and your crews will be treated humanely while we extract all useful knowledge from your minds. Resist, and we will destroy your ships one by one until compliance is achieved." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in momentary silence. "Orders, Admiral?" asked Commander Rodriguez, struggling to keep the smile from her voice. Wei's performance of stunned betrayal gave way to a show of desperate resilience. "Battle stations. Deploy defensive formations Beta 6. All ships to Condition 1. Earth's vessels moved into what appeared to be a hasty defensive posture, their movements showing just enough coordination to seem competent, but not enough to seem prepared. The first Alterian salvos struck Earth's outer vessels, creating spectacular but largely superficial explosions. The ship's outer hulls had been specially designed with reactive materials that produced impressive visual effects, while the actual armor beneath remained intact. As the battle commenced, Admiral Wei retreated to his ready room with Dr. Chen and Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, the 3 of them dropping their facade the moment the door sealed behind them. "Phase 1 complete," Wei said, his voice now calm and clinical. "They believe we're caught completely off guard." Dr. Chen nodded, reviewing incoming data from their hidden sensor network. "Their command ships are broadcasting victory announcements throughout their fleet. Supreme Commander Zilvorax is particularly satisfied with himself. He shouldn't be, Okonkwo said, bringing up a tactical display showing the status of her covered operations teams. My people are in position on 17 of their key vessels, including their flagship. Their security systems never detected the insertions. Wei allowed himself a genuine smile. Now we begin the real battle, not with weapons, but with perception. Let's show these Altarians what happens when you mistake humanity's stories for humanity's nature. The second day of the battle unfolded exactly as Admiral Wei had planned. Earth's vessels executed seemingly desperate evasive maneuvers, appearing to narrowly escape destruction while taking calculated hits that produced spectacular light shows, but minimal actual damage. In the secure command center below the Determinations Bridge, Dr. Chen monitored the Altarian communication networks, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces as she implemented the next phase of their strategy. Transmitting psychological package Alpha to the Morillian command vessels, she announced. The data packet contained carefully crafted intelligence suggesting their land-dwelling Vortec allies planned to claim water-rich worlds after the human defeat. Meanwhile, a separate transmission reached the crystalline Shardai, implying they would serve as sacrifice plays in the next assault. Each message was composed in the exact dialect and encryption pattern used by legitimate Altarian communications, making them indistinguishable from authentic orders. Package delivered, Chen confirmed. Monitoring for response. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo directed her Special Forces teams from a separate console. Team Whisper has completed modifications to the targeting systems on the Altarian flagship. Team Shadow has planted the electromagnetic disruptors on their communication hubs. Across the artificial battlefield, Earth vessels released what appeared to be primitive countermeasures, simple chaff and flare systems that the Altarians dismissed as desperately outdated technology. In reality, each dispersed cloud contained billions of specialized nanites programmed to infiltrate Altarian ships through cooling vents and microscopic hull imperfections. Admiral Wei observed all this with quiet satisfaction. Status of our apparent damage. Fleet showing simulated damage levels between 35 and 60%, reported Commander Rodriguez. Altarian tactical analysis indicates they expect our defensive capabilities to collapse within 16 hours. Perfect. Wei nodded. Time to introduce a new variable. He activated a direct channel to Captain Morgan's vessel, the Intrepid, which had thus far remained untouched at the center of the human formation. Captain, execute protocol Wounded Swan. The Intrepid suddenly broke formation, its engines flaring dramatically as it appeared to suffer a catastrophic power system failure. As the ship tumbled toward the nearest Altarian cruiser, emergency beacons activated, broadcasting distress signals on all frequencies. The Altarian vessel predictably moved to capture this gift, a largely intact human ship ripe for technological harvesting. Their tractor beams locked onto the Intrepid, drawing it into their massive docking bay. They took the bait, Okonkwo confirmed, her dark eyes gleaming. Captain Morgan's team is transmitting reconnaissance data from inside their primary weapons platform. On the Altarian command ship, Supreme Commander Zilvorax observed the battle with growing frustration. The humans were proving unexpectedly resilient, their defensive tactics just effective enough to prolong the inevitable. Why are the Morillian vessels adjusting their formation? He demanded, noting several aquatic commanders had shifted their ships away from Vortec battle groups. Unknown, Commander, his executive officer replied. And the Shardai have requested confirmation of the next phase attack vectors 3 times in the past hour. Zilvorax's facial plates contracted in the Drenthai expression of suspicion. Something is not right. The humans should have broken by now. He opened a direct channel to Admiral Wei, finding the human commander's image flickering as though their communication systems were failing. Your resistance is impressive but futile, Admiral, Zilvorax stated. Perhaps you are not as psychologically simple as we believed. Wei allowed himself to appear haggard but defiant. Perhaps you should have studied our history rather than our entertainment, Commander. Humans have faced extinction many times. We don't break easily. As the transmission ended, Wei turned to his senior officers, dropping the pretense of exhaustion. They're beginning to question their assumptions. Excellent. Prepare for Phase 3. Let's introduce some more primitive technology. Dr. Chen smiled. The electromagnetic pulse generators are ready, Admiral. The Altarians won't know what hit them. 3 days into what the Altarians believed was their certain victory, Supreme Commander Zil Vorax faced mounting pressure from his coalition. The human fleet continued to execute surprisingly effective defensive maneuvers despite appearing badly damaged and disorganized. The Morilian captains are demanding additional security guarantees, his executive officer reported. And the Shardai battle group is refusing to advance without confirmation from their homeworld representatives. Zil Vorax's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme agitation. This is unacceptable. We have the humans surrounded and outgunned 3-1. He studied the tactical display, showing the battered Earth vessels clustered in an increasingly tight defensive formation. Their apparent desperation satisfied him. Deploy our reserve fleets, he ordered. End this resistance now. I want those human ships disabled and their technologies in our laboratories by the next cycle. As the massive Altarian reserve fleet moved into attack formation, Admiral Wei received the intelligence from Okonkwo's operatives aboard the captured Intrepid. They've committed their reserves, Admiral, she reported. All Altarian vessels are now in optimal position. Wei's expression remained calm as he nodded. The board is set. He opened a channel to all Earth vessels, his voice resonating with quiet authority. All ships. This is Admiral Wei. Execute protocol mirror shattered. Authentication code. Humanity knows. Throughout the human fleet, a remarkable transformation began. Ships that had appeared crippled suddenly straightened their trajectories. Hull plates previously showing battle damage detached and drifted away, revealing pristine armor beneath. Weapon ports hidden by sophisticated holographic technology became visible, powering up with a synchronicity that spoke of perfect coordination rather than desperate improvisation. On the Altarian flagship, alarms blared as sensors detected a massive surge in energy readings from the human vessels. What is happening? Zil Vorax demanded, mandibles clicking frantically as the tactical display transformed before his eyes. Unknown, Commander, his science officer responded, voice trembling. Their ships are shedding their damage. Power signatures have tripled across their fleet. Before Zil Vorax could respond, Admiral Wei's image appeared on his command screen. Not the haggard, desperate commander of previous communications, but a composed, almost amused military leader whose calm demeanor suggested complete control. Supreme Commander, Wei said conversationally, I believe it's time we spoke honestly with one another. What trickery is this? Zil Vorax demanded. No trickery, just the truth you missed in your analysis of our species. Wei's expression hardened slightly. We knew from the first transmission. Your battle was a lie, but humanity was the only one in the know. As Wei spoke these words, Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo activated the final phase of their operation. Across the Altarian fleet, the infiltrated systems they had compromised over the past 3 days activated simultaneously. Engines shut down, weapons lost power, and ships began drifting helplessly in space. Inside the Altarian flagship, Supreme Commander Zil Vorax watched in horror as system after system went dark around him. Emergency lighting bathed the command center in blood-red illumination as primary power failed. How is this possible? He whispered. On his still-functioning view screen, Admiral Wei allowed himself a small smile. You studied our entertainment, Commander, but failed to understand what it revealed about us. Humans aren't simple creatures driven by emotion and heroic impulses. We're survivors shaped by millennia of conflict, masters of deception who recognize your trap immediately, and chose to walk into it on our terms. The human fleet moved into perfect formation around the now powerless Altarian vessels, their true technological superiority and tactical brilliance finally revealed. Now, Wei said, his voice carrying the weight of quiet authority, I believe it's time to negotiate. But this time, with all cards on the table. The observation chamber aboard the Determination had been converted into an emergency conference room. Along one side sat the human delegation, Admiral Wei, Dr. Chen, and Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo. Facing them across the polished obsidian table were the leaders of the 7 Altarian species, their expressions ranging from rage to fear to grudging respect. Supreme Commander Zilvorax sat rigidly at the center, his exoskeleton clicking softly as he adjusted his posture. You have disabled our fleet and left us defenseless, he stated flatly. What are your terms for our surrender? Admiral Wei studied the alien commander for a moment before responding. This isn't about surrender, Commander. This is about understanding. He gestured to Dr. Chen, who activated a holographic display between them. It showed Earth, not the modern world of gleaming cities and advanced technology, but Earth as it had been throughout history, scared by countless wars and conflicts. Your intelligence gathering about humanity was impressive but incomplete, she began. You studied our entertainment, our public broadcasts, our carefully curated interstellar messages. What you failed to grasp was the context that shaped our species. Images flickered across the display. Ancient battles, modern wars, the full spectrum of human conflict and competition. Humanity evolved on a planet with millions of competing species. Chen continued. Our biosphere forced constant adaptation rather than specialization. Then we competed against ourselves, thousands of languages, hundreds of nations, dozens of ideologies, all struggling for dominance. Our entire history is a lesson in detecting deception and anticipating betrayal. The Morillian representative, a blue-skinned amphibious being, leaned forward. But your stories, your broadcasts, they showed creatures of emotion, beings who rushed to aid others without question. We nodded. Our stories reveal our aspirations, not our nature. We tell tales of selfless heroes precisely because we understand selfishness. We celebrate trust because we comprehend betrayal. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo tapped her console, changing the display to show detailed schematics of Altarian technology, biology, and psychology. Within days of contact, we mapped your species' vulnerabilities, your psychological blind spots, the limitations of your coalition. Our technology isn't necessarily superior to yours. We're simply better at understanding our opponents. The crystalline, Shardai representative's voice resonated through the translator. How did you penetrate our security so completely? You were looking for threats you understood, Okonkwo explained. Complex cyber attacks, advanced energy weapons, sophisticated infiltration technology. Instead, we deployed countermeasures your civilization had outgrown centuries ago. Simple radio frequencies that disrupted your quantum communications, magnetic pulses that affected your crystalline computing architecture. The representatives exchanged glances, the full extent of their miscalculation becoming clear. What happens now? Zilvorax asked, mandibles tight against his face. Enslavement. Resource extraction. These are the standard protocols for a defeated civilization. Admiral Wei's expression softened slightly. Those might be your protocols, Commander. They are not ours. He stood, his posture straight but not threatening. Humanity learned long ago that true victory comes not from destroying enemies, but from transforming them into allies. Your coalition attempted to deceive and conquer us because you believed that was the rational choice when facing an advanced but naive species. Wei placed his hands flat on the table, leaning forward slightly. Now you know better. We aren't naive, and you aren't in a position to conquer. But neither of us needs to lose today. Instead, we offer something your coalition may find unfamiliar. A genuine alliance based on mutual understanding and respect. Zilvorax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, the Drenthai expression of profound confusion. You would trust us after our deception. Trust must be earned, Wei acknowledged. But possibility must be offered. That's another lesson humanity learned through our long, bloody history. Sometimes the greatest victory comes from the choice not to destroy when destruction is within your grasp. 6 months after what historians now called the Mirror Maze engagement, the observation deck of Earth's newly constructed diplomatic station Concordia teamed with representatives from all 7 Altarian species. They mingled with human delegates beneath a transparent dome that showcased the swirling nebula where their civilizations had first collided. Admiral Wei, now serving as Earth's first interstellar ambassador, stood beside Supreme Commander Zilvorax, who had been appointed as the Altarian Alliance's diplomatic liaison after the previous Leadership Council was dissolved. The Mutual Development Accords are proceeding better than expected, we noted, watching a group of human engineers collaborating with Shardai crystal shapers on a new communication system, though I admit I had my doubts during the first weeks. Zilvorax's mandibles flexed in what Wei had learned was an expression of thoughtful agreement, as did I. Our species believed for generations that true alliance could only follow dominance. Your approach has proven educational. Across the chamber, Dr. Chen led a mixed-species team through a cultural exchange simulation. Her interspecies communication initiative had developed new translation protocols that captured not just words but cultural context between humans and each Altarian race. The Morillian water song actually shares rhythmic patterns with human Welsh poetry, she explained to her fascinated audience. And the Ventari conceptual languages have structural similarities to certain Earth programming codes. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, meanwhile, had transformed her Special Operations Division into the Joint Security Force. Her teams now featured mixed human-Altarian personnel, each species contributing unique perceptual abilities and problem-solving approaches. The Drenthai can see ultraviolet patterns, while Shardai detect magnetic field variations. She explained to a group of new recruits. Humans bring intuitive pattern recognition and situational adaptability. Together, we notice what none of us would alone. As the delegates prepared for the formal signing ceremony, the station's sensors detected an approaching vessel. It displayed no recognizable configuration and broadcast no standard identification. Ambassador, the communications officer called. We're receiving a transmission from the unknown ship. They're requesting contact with both human and Altarian representatives. Wei and Zilvorax exchanged glances. New players entering the game. Wei asked quietly. It appears so, Zilvorax replied. Rumors of our encounter have spread through neighboring systems. This may be the first of many civilizations curious about the species that turned deception into alliance. The main view screen activated, showing a being unlike any they had encountered, a multi-limbed entity surrounded by a luminescent field. I represent the Cassiopean Concord, the translator rendered its complex harmonic speech. We have observed the remarkable resolution of your recent misunderstanding. Such outcomes are unprecedented in our historical records. Wei stepped forward, Zilvorax at his side. We welcome peaceful contact with the Cassiopean Concord, he responded. Though I should warn you, we've grown rather adept at recognizing deception. The alien's field pulsed in what might have been amusement. So we have heard. It is precisely this quality that makes your combined civilizations of interest. Perhaps there are approaches to interstellar relations that our Concord has not considered. As the formal introductions commenced, Wei turned to Dr. Chen and Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, who had joined them at the communication station. It seems our little object lesson is having wider effects, Chen observed. Okonkwo nodded. The universe is watching how we handle ourselves. Wei smiled slightly. Then let's show them what genuine cooperation looks like. Zilvorax extended his primary limb in the human gesture of handshaking that he had recently adopted. From false battle to true partnership, perhaps the universe needed to see that trust, once earned, creates possibilities that neither deception nor force can achieve. As they prepared to welcome their new visitors, the station rotated slowly, bringing Earth into view through the transparent dome. The blue world that had taught the stars that strength could mean choosing restraint, that victory sometimes meant offering peace, and that humanity's greatest weapon had always been understanding.